Good morning and welcome to a very bright and sunny Warsaw in Poland, the capital city of Poland. I've visited Warsaw a number of times over the years, but going to be spending the next couple of days here just to spend a bit more time getting under the skin of the city. And I'm starting my tour of Warsaw at this iconic structure behind me, the Palace of Culture. This was a gift to the people of Poland by Stalin in 1955. It was quite a controversial building. There were talks in the past about actually demolishing this building because of what it represents in terms of the history of Poland and Soviet oppression. But it is today one of the most recognizable landmarks here in the city, and Stalin actually donated several of these buildings to different places in the Soviet Union. One of them is in Riga, which I visited, but the one in Riga is not as large nor as impressive as the tower here in Poland. So let's go and explore the tower and see the fantastic view from the top. So the actual name for this tower is the Palace of Culture and Science. As you can see around me, there are a number of large tower blocks, skyscrapers that have been built around it over the years, and Warsaw is, as a city, is a really vibrant city, strong economy, becoming one of the major powerhouses in Europe. As I said a moment ago, there was talk in the past about actually whether this building should be kept here and whether it should be demolished, and another proposal was that it should be surrounded by other buildings so it was obscured, but I think they've come to appreciate its significance both historically and architecturally. So this tower is very close to Warsaw Central Station, so if you're coming into Warsaw by train, you're literally a few minutes walk from the main station. So welcome to floor 30 of the Palace of Culture and Science, with good views over the city. So it may not be very clear on this video, but in the distance beyond that tower block in the foreground, you might just be able to make out the old town, which we'll wander into shortly. The old town was completely destroyed during the Second World War, so what you see today has been restored brick by brick. So although it looks hundreds of years old, it is in fact very modern, but a replica of what was there prior to its destruction in the Second World War. And much of this city during the Second World War was badly damaged and destroyed, hence being such a modern city today. There's lots of modern skyscrapers here, and the one in the middle is apparently one of the tallest residential tower blocks, not only in Poland but in Europe. And it's nicknamed the Sail because of its curved design. And there we have Cultural Palace just behind me, and Warsaw Central Station opposite. Very modernist structure, and just across the road there's a large shopping centre. We're gonna see if I can find some food.
Przypominamy, że to już tylko 2 rundy.
Odjechało 5 kolarzy. Paweł Berga
zachwalacze absolutnie.
So here we have the presidential palace in the heart of the city. So this is an interesting memorial to the President of the Republic of Poland, who was killed along with 95 other people on the 10th of April 2010 when they were visiting Smolensk for the 70th anniversary of the Katyn massacre. It was a major tragedy where many senior officials, Polish officials, politicians, army officials were killed in a tragic plane crash. And there's obviously some big sporting event taking place here at the moment. Lots of cyclists.
Fanfary dzisiaj będą przedostatnie na krakowskim Przedmieściu. A szanowni amatorzy, jeszcze ci, którzy startowali.
So here we have the main shopping street in the city with lots of high-end shops. Very attractive street. I think this street here in Warsaw is as fine as you'll find in any other major city in the world. And what's so amazing is to think that all of this is basically brand new, reconstructed after the end of the war. And here we have one of the most important churches in the city, Holy Cross Church. Again, that church, I believe, has played quite an important part in Polish history and in the resistance during the war and afterwards. One thing I notice about visiting churches in Poland is they always keep a very respectful silence as you're walking around. So I couldn't make any commentary in the church, but it's a lovely church. But what I didn't realise is that the heart of Chopin, the Polish composer, is buried in this church. He died at the age of 39 in Paris, and it was his wish that his heart, part of his remains, be returned to Poland. So his sister smuggled his heart back into Poland, and it's been laid to rest here in this church. The rest of Chopin's body is buried in Paris. It's the first time I've seen in flesh the Tesla truck. Don't know who that belongs to. I must admit, it's not exactly my cup of tea, although I would love to have the experience of driving one. So I haven't actually got into the main square yet, but I just want to go and show you the tomb of the unknown soldier. So just as Westminster Abbey has the tomb to an unknown soldier, so they have a tomb to an unknown soldier here in the centre of Warsaw, which is guarded by soldiers. One thing you notice about Warsaw is it has a lot of visitors, like any major city in Europe would, but it's also a bit more cosmopolitan compared to other Polish cities. So you see a few different ethnicities around, whereas Poland tends to be a pretty homogeneous society, but Warsaw itself is slightly more diverse compared to the rest of Poland. So I believe this site is guarded 24 hours a day. And just behind it you have this very attractive park. One of the most beautiful parks in the city. A think when a lot of people think about Warsaw, they probably have in mind quite a modern, concrete city, maybe not the most attractive city in Europe, but it is actually quite an attractive city. It's got some lovely, charming areas, but it's also a surprisingly green city with some lovely parks. So if you're thinking of places to visit, then you should definitely put Warsaw on your itinerary, especially if you're coming to Poland. And of course, it's very well connected to the rest of the country. So this is interesting. That's the tomb of the unknown warrior at the moment, but they're redeveloping the square to restore it to what it used to look like, which I believe is this image here. So you can actually see that the building over there form part of this lower archway and the columns above it. So if we come back in a few years' time, this whole area will look very different, but the tomb itself is staying where it is. But I think they're just trying to restore this square back to its former glory. So it'll be interesting to see what this place looks like. So here we have a model of what they're going to construct. So you can make out the tomb of the unknown soldier in the middle, and they're going to restore all the buildings around it, which is a huge task, but it's going to really transform the square, and you can see the park behind. So it's things like this that really fascinate me. So I've been to Warsaw a number of times over the years, so it's not an unfamiliar city to me. I've only stayed here overnight once before. That was 24 years ago, my very first visit to Poland, and we were here in winter, so you know it wasn't the best time to visit. But it's a city that's obviously been deeply impacted by its history, particularly during the Second World War and its destruction. And so it's really interesting to see how they're restoring the city even to this day. And this is obviously a major project that they're doing behind me to restore the palace, and it's going to utterly transform this square and this part of the city. I'll just show you through this board here behind me, because you can see the foundations of the palace that was destroyed. They've also got lots of interesting posters along here as well. I like this one particularly. So it's the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. It takes place every hour. Maybe I should have stayed there tonight rather than the Ibis. There goes a very old-fashioned looking tram. I wonder if that's a tourist tram. Warsaw is an interesting mixture of really fine architecture, like this building here, and fairly modern, brutalist, communist architecture, like these blocks of flats opposite. Here's our friend, Pope John Paul II again. I mentioned earlier that this building was gifted in 1955, or constructed in 1955, which means that it is, of course, this year celebrating its 70th anniversary. So I think this is a protest in support of refugees. Poland has been quite a hostile country for refugees, asylum seekers and so forth, so I think that protest is calling for refugees to be made welcome in Poland, but I may be wrong. Unfortunately, I don't speak any Polish. So there's something else going on down here. I wonder if that other protest was a counter-protest. There's definitely a very heavy police presence. This protest seems to have a few more people in attendance, or maybe not. Very noisy, whoever they are.
Hitlerowskie Niemcy, czyli Trzecia Rzesza, jesteś kompletnym zerem. Jeżeli wyrażasz się w ten sposób do kobiety w miejscu uświęconym krwią Polaków.
So what I can tell is I think that's an anti-Ukrainian protest, which doesn't have that many people attending, although lots of people are just listening in. And I think the other protest I saw, which actually had more people saying refugees welcome, I think that was in support of Ukrainian refugees. So the police were filming that protest as well, filming the speaker, filming what they're saying. So I think that's what it's got to do with. So the issue of immigration is a live issue in Poland, just as it is in the UK. So welcome to the old city, the old town. There's the royal castle just on the right. As I said earlier, all of this was destroyed during the Second World War, so although it looks very old, it's actually all very modern. Something else going on here as well. Now I'm meant to be doing a tour at 6 o'clock and we're meant to be meeting at that statue in front of me, but I suspect it may be moved to somewhere else. Might be this person here in front of me. So it's all become clear. Today is Ukrainian Independence Day, and that's why there's a lot of Ukrainian flags here and a concert or memorial happening. And the protests, the noisy protests I heard just behind me, anti-Ukrainian protests, is just a very small minority. But you can see lots of people here, lots of Ukrainian flags flying.
Anyway, heavy internal, so that's how it works to be kind of
So I've travelled somewhere slightly different now. I'm in Lazienki Park, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's one of the major royal parks here in the city. I've not been here before, but it is absolutely stunning, really beautiful. So let's have a wander around this park. After the sombre tone of the Jewish cemetery, it's lovely to come somewhere a little bit different. This is a very large park, much larger than I realised, and it is also an incredibly beautiful place. So I'm on my way to try and find the statue to the Polish composer Frédéric Chopin, which I believe is at the top of this hill. And then once I've been there, there's a palace in the middle of a lake that I want to go and see. So here we are, the statue to Frédéric Chopin, who moved to Warsaw, I learned yesterday, at the age of 6 months old. Poland's most famous composer. What I hadn't appreciated about this park is just how large it is. a real green oasis in the middle of the city. We've got some red squirrels just in front of me. Unlike in Britain where we're overrun by greys, Poland has reds, and look how close I can get to him. So it says there, welcome to the wedding of Lilia and Robin. So congratulations Lydia and Robin on your wedding. Holding their reception in this building in the middle of the park. You can see autumn's just round the corner, trees starting to turn. I must admit, I actually do love autumn and the colours of autumn. Something exciting about moving into the season of autumn. So this is the view I came down for of the palace. Unfortunately it has some scaffolding in front of it, but it's still a beautiful location. So if you're trying to escape the hustle and bustle of the city centre, this park is definitely the place you should come. It's really lovely, really beautiful, really peaceful. It's actually not too crowded, although admittedly it's getting a little bit later in the afternoon. But still, what a beautiful little spot. You could spend half a day just wandering around this park if you wanted. It's a pity it has the scaffolding over it. I had hoped the other side of the palace might be free of scaffolding, but unfortunately that's not the case. But I'm still going to carry on walking up this way towards a very fine looking bridge, and we'll get good views looking back to the palace. But this is such a beautiful little spot. I'm just a little bit concerned about the very, very dark clouds I can see ahead of me. So just admiring this architecture, which to me looks fairly Stalinist, and these buildings along here, in one sense they're quite grand, on another hand they're quite run down. I don't know if you can see over there, but there's a lot of graffiti on the lower columns. This side is a bit better, but then you've got these sort of statues of the workers. Looks like a steel worker there. And just interesting, you can sort of see what they were trying to achieve with their architecture, and I'm assuming these buildings probably date from the 1950s onwards. I may be completely wrong, but that would be my guess. I don't know if that's meant to be a coal miner. And then we've got this chap over here, not sure what he's meant to be. Something to do with agriculture, holding a scythe. They say they're quite impressive. You can sort of see what they're trying to get at, but so much graffiti, which is a real pity. And then you've got this, I don't know if you call it a square or not, interchange, but again it's quite impressive in its sort of scale and ambition. And you've got these rather impressive lights, lanterns, which are not lit up yet but will be soon. So that's the street where there's quite a lot of graffiti, but if I just turn around here and walk over to this building here, you can see they've got some very high-end shops. So there's Rolex, and that shop there, don't know, is that jewellery? They're quite high-end. Again, impressive building. This one's in much better condition. There's something about Stalinist architecture which is both, on one hand, very brutalist, but on the other hand, actually quite striking, monumental. Maybe that's the word I'm searching for. You see it in other Polish cities, for example, Krakow, in the Nowa Huta part of the city, which was built for the steel workers. And it looks quite grey and drab, but at the same time the buildings are actually quite impressive as well. Again, just looking over there on that side. Now, I might be completely wrong about the date of these buildings, but I reckon they're all probably post-war, as most of the city was destroyed. As I mentioned previously, all of this was completely destroyed during the Second World War. So it's all been restored, brick by brick. That's looking towards the modern heart of the city. Skyscrapers. And down below me, the main shopping street, main thoroughfare here in the city. And that's looking towards the direction of the presidential palace. So Warsaw is in fact the third capital that Poland has had. The first capital was Gniezno in the north, not far from Poznan. Again, apologies for pronunciation. Then it moved to Krakow, and then it was moved to Warsaw. And the reason it was moved to Warsaw is because the Kingdom of Poland also included Lithuania at the time, and Warsaw was a much more central location within the kingdom, as opposed to Krakow, which is in the south of Poland. In the distance, you can probably just make out the National Stadium, which can seat over 50,000 people. So looking to the other side of the Vistula, that was the part of the city where the workers tended to live. Apparently it's become quite hip and trendy, especially as the tram network has extended across the river, and there are plans to extend the metro system as well. So the church in the middle of the screen with the large green roof is in fact the cathedral. When they rebuilt the cathedral following the end of the war, they wanted to build it in a style more in keeping with churches across Poland. So the guide the other night was saying that they travelled all around Poland, looked at other churches, other cathedrals, the style and design, because the cathedral that was there before this one, or the facade of the cathedral, was a little bit different. It was more of an English style, and when they rebuilt the old town, they wanted something that was more fitting, more in keeping with Polish style. So that's the viewing platform I've just been up, maybe the bell tower of the church possibly, but it gives you really good views over the old square. When I was here on Sunday, this place was absolutely heaving because it was the Ukrainian Independence Day, and there was lots of events going on to mark that. There were also some counter demonstrations taking place as well. So it's much quieter today. If you're interested in doing the free tours also here in Warsaw that I've mentioned, they start normally from this column here. So the guide on Sunday was saying that in the 1930s, just before the outbreak of the Second World War, a lot of the buildings in the old city had become rather dilapidated, so there was a major scheme to renew and restore and survey the buildings in the old city. So they undertook this massive survey, not realising how important that would be, because all of this was destroyed during the war. But because they had conducted that survey and had detailed records of all the buildings here, all the designs and the buildings, they were able to rebuild the old town as it was before the war. Also, this whole place was literally razed to the ground, so they reused a lot of the bricks to rebuild the buildings. So the bricks that you see around you were reused in the rebuilding of the old city. So this is the inner court of the Royal Castle. You can visit this museum. I'm not planning to do that on this trip. Got to leave something to come back to, but it's a very popular attraction. So here we have a picture of what the Royal Castle looked like in 1945 at the end of the war. Nothing left. So here we have a close-up of the cathedral. So if you look carefully, you can see signs of the damage caused by the fighting, the bullet holes there in the bricks that have been restored in the archway. So this restaurant just in front of me was somewhere I ate the other night, and if you're gluten-free, celiac, they do quite a wide variety of gluten-free products, so I do recommend that. And it's just round the corner from the old square, the heart of the city, which we'll wander into now. Now in the heart of this square you've got this statue of what is now a mermaid. The guide was saying that originally it was a siren, but this is the symbol of the city, and he did explain the story how the siren fell in love with the most beautiful man that they'd ever encountered and became immortal, I believe, and they married and settled down. And Warsaw gets its name from the combination of the man's name and the siren or mermaid's name. Again, it's a beautiful square. So one interesting piece of information the tour guide gave is that where you see exposed bricks, like in that doorway, that's because those bricks, or that doorway or that part of the building, survived the bombing. So where you see exposed bricks, they're original. Of course, you don't see many exposed bricks in the old town because so much of it was destroyed. Again, if you look here, you can see all the damage, bullet marks, bomb damage caused to the brickwork. So this is the Barbican, And again, this was restored using the bricks that were lying all around in the old city. So some of these bricks will have been are original. They've just been recycled. Now, I don't know if you can see, but there is a black line in that wall, and in fact, if you trace it around, you can see the black line in all the brickwork. And the guide was saying that the bricks underneath that black line, they're all original. What's above it is what was restored following the war. You might be able to see the black line that I was talking about earlier. Apparently it demarks the point between the original bricks, which actually are underneath that black line, and what was restored afterwards. So if I understood the guide correctly the other night, he said that these defences were only ever used once to actually defend the city, and that was during the Polish-Swedish wars. And the defences were used not by the Poles but by the Swedes, who had taken control of the city, and they used the defences built by the Polish to prevent the Poles from reclaiming the city, which I think ultimately they were unsuccessful in doing. So these defensive structures were only ever used once. Now we're actually out of the old town. I'll go back there in a moment. But this is the new town that I'm in, so-called new town. And I want to show you an important house here in the new town. Now the building I want to show you is this white one on the right with the balcony. And this is the birthplace of Marie Curie. Marie Curie, one of the most famous Polish, if not the most famous Polish woman, and she was born in that house. Marie Curie won the Nobel Prize for her scientific discoveries. So you can now visit her house. It's a museum. There is a monument here to commemorate the murder of 18 residents from an old person's home that was on this site when the Germans were pacifying the old town following the Warsaw uprising. These residents were cared by the Daughters of Mercy, and they were killed here. And a number of other people were apparently also killed in this church. So there's information here about this monastery behind me, or in front of me even, where the Benedictine nuns of perpetual adoration worshipped, and during the Warsaw uprising they were given the chance to leave this place to be freed by the Nazis, but they refused. And on the 31st of August 1944, over 1,000 people, including orphans, as well as 34 nuns and 4 priests, were killed when this church was bombed by the Germans. And that's a picture of all the nuns that were killed on that fateful day. And here we have a photo of the church after it was bombed. Again, there's another plaque here to commemorate where 70 people this time were killed by the Germans in 1944. So this is a statue commemorating the architect who helped rebuild Warsaw. I'm not going to pronounce his surname, but his first name was Jan, and he died in 1983. So earlier I mentioned about exposed brick being original. This was the building that the guide was referring to when he mentioned that. So before the war, these bricks would not have been exposed. They would have been covered by mortar, plaster, like we see either side. But this building, this section of the building with the red brick survived. The top obviously didn't, and the buildings either side didn't. So that's how they try and differentiate between what survived the war and what didn't. So everything either side has been reconstructed, but part of that tower managed to survive the war. So one of the things that was being talked about on the guide is the fact that after the war, Poland was controlled by Polish communists, so it's under the sphere of influence of the Soviet Union, but it was actually run by Polish communists. So for them, rebuilding Warsaw was a matter of national pride, and they wanted to show that socialism was good for the people rather than just rebuilding ugly buildings for the sake of business owners, the bourgeoisie. They wanted to rebuild the city to how it was, to show that communism is good for the people. I also asked the question, well, why did they rebuild the churches and cathedrals, thinking that obviously communism is anti-religion. And he said again, they wanted some sort of unifying force, and the thought was for the communists that when the older generations died out, then religion would die out, because the younger people would be taught communist ideals and go on to embrace atheism. Well, that of course didn't happen, but that's why they rebuilt the churches and the cathedrals in Warsaw. Back in the old square. One thing I've just noticed, there aren't any buskers here in the old town, and often you'd find them in other cities. I wonder if they're prohibited from busking here. So this little building here in the gap is the narrowest fronted house in Poland, apparently. It's just the width of the windows. Now, the actual house itself isn't that narrow all the way through, it's just the frontage. It actually widens out at the back. But apparently that is the narrowest house in Poland, or was. They have, I believe, constructed an even narrower one somewhere, but that was to take the crown as narrowest house, whereas this one is original, and it's just tucked in the corner of this square. It's not even a square, and that's the back of the cathedral over there. This bell in the square was placed here, I'm not sure when, but it's cracked, so it was couldn't be used. But the tradition is, or the legend is, that if you hold on to the top of the bell and hop around it or walk around it, then your wishes will come true. In fact, there have just been 1 or 2 people doing that. So I mentioned the narrowest frontage in Poland. Well, this is the rear of the house, and as you can see, it's wide and it's an ordinary looking building, so it's only the front of the building that's actually narrow. So a slight change in plan. I have decided just to walk briefly across to the other side of the city, mainly really just to see what the city looks like from the other side of the river. And if I just turn round, You can see a bit of the skyline. Unfortunately, the sun is in the wrong direction at the moment for me. Anyway, here we are walking across the Vistula. Vistula is currently at its lowest level ever, its lowest recorded level. Parts of this river are only 10 centimetres deep apparently in places. They were talking about this on the news the other night, quite concerned about it because Poland is in a meteorological drought, I believe. I think that was the term they used. Anyway, this river runs all the way from the south of Poland all the way up to the north to, I think it comes out near Gdansk. And Torun, my wife's home city, is also on the Vistula. Now, Torun, in my opinion, has a much better vista than Warsaw. Anyway, let's walk across. And the plan is to walk across the bridge over there, the Red Bridge, which is the only pedestrian bridge across the Vistula. A new bridge, so I'm going to walk over there. There is just so much to see and do in Warsaw. Even 4 days is not enough. And just across the other side of the river we have the zoo. I call this building behind me a church. It's not actually a church, it's a cathedral, 19th century cathedral, I believe. Again, it's got some really quite striking modern stained glass windows in there. Again, I presume that it got badly damaged during the war. That's one thing I've really noticed about a lot of these churches in Warsaw, some really stunning stained glass windows. So here we are on the only bridge crossing the Vistula that is solely for the use of pedestrians and cyclists. You do have to be careful with the cyclists, lots of them around, and I find walking around here you just have to take extra care when walking, crossing roads particularly because of the cyclists. You do get a good view of the main business district in Warsaw as you cross over. So if you want a different view of the city, you might want to come down here. I've also got these seats built into the side of the bridge, so people just sitting here, taking in the view, watching the sunset. You can see how low the river is, exposed rocks, and in the middle of the river looks like wooden poles. I wonder if that used to be a crossing. One thing I haven't mentioned is getting around Warsaw. The good news is Warsaw has a very effective public transport system, which you will need to use if you want to go and visit the various different sites, because things are quite spread apart in the city. But they do have a very extensive tram network, buses, and even a metro underground system. There are plans to expand the underground system quite considerably in the next 5-10 years, so that's going to be quite a major scheme. But one of the things you might want to do is you can buy a 3-day travel pass, which I think at the moment is about 36 zloty. Very good value. It allows you to travel within Zone 1. Now Zone 1 is basically the city. Zone 2 is everything outside the city. So if you're visiting Warsaw, you're going to just need to stay in Zone 1. You're probably not wanting to have to travel to Zone 2. So you could get yourself a 72-hour pass. If you're here at the weekends, I think there's a special 2-day pass that covers Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, and I think it finishes on Monday morning. Or you can just pay each time you use the transport. It's not very expensive, and as I say, it is very convenient, and it's a great way of getting around the city. So my next destination is Warsaw University Library Gardens, because apparently they have these really fascinating gardens on top of the roof of the university library. And a friend visited here very recently. I saw their pictures and thought, looks like a really interesting place to visit. It's open till 8 o'clock in the summer. Now, I had a thought that you had to pay to come in here, but it actually looks like it's free, which is an added bonus. If you just go here, you can look down on people studying in the library. Now, I must admit, this is a bit of a revelation, this site, but it's lovely here. It really is lovely, and as I say, you're on top of the university library. So if you're looking for something fun and free to do in Warsaw, come to the university library and check out the gardens. So it's some really clever urban design, because when you're in the middle of a city, how do you create green spaces? Well, why not create them on the top of roofs? If more cities and urban planners decided to do this, we could really transform our cities. I'm very fortunate that I live in a part of the world where I have access to some beautiful countryside, but if you live in an urban environment and you don't have much access to green spaces, something like this would be great. You could also grow vegetables here, fruit, you could do all sorts of stuff. So I'm now on a different roof garden. This is the roof garden of the Copernicus Science Centre, which is just a few minutes walk from the University Library roof gardens. Not as many people here. Just like the University Library roof garden, this one is free to come up to. I'm generally not one for big cities. They're fine to visit, but I'm always glad to leave. But I must admit, Warsaw's really grown on me these last few days. It's got so much to see and to do, and I've only just scratched the surface. You could spend a month here and there would still be stuff to see and do. But it's been a really great few days. My last day tomorrow. I'll be leaving tomorrow afternoon, early evening. So some plans for the morning, early afternoon, but it has been a lovely time. I've really enjoyed visiting Warsaw. Good morning, it's my last day here in Warsaw, and this is where I've been staying the last 3 nights, the Ibis Hotel, Ibis Warsaw Centrum. Very convenient location next to the tramway. It's about 15-20 minute walk to the Museum of the Warsaw Uprising, and it's a 27-minute walk to the Jewish Museum. So nice hotel, would definitely stay here again. Comfortable rooms, good breakfast. Actually, if you're celiac or can't have gluten, there's quite a few things you can have from the breakfast menu, which is not always the case. And yeah, the only slight complaint I would have is that not last night but the night before, I think I must have had a family with a small child in the room above me, because I could hear the child running around a bit, but that stopped about 10:30, so that wasn't a problem. So yeah, comfortable hotel, comfortable beds, yeah, highly recommended, and good value as well. So here we are back at Warsaw Central Station, where I arrived on Sunday morning, getting my train back to Torun. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it might have encouraged you to come and explore Warsaw for yourself. Until next time, take care and God bless.